Hello and welcome to this preview of the annual meeting of the EBRD. I'm with the EBRD's chief economist, Sergei Guriev, and we're talking about the transition report. Sergei, it's called Transition in Work, your transition report this time. Why did you pick that as the topic?
Well, work, of course, matters for everybody. We spend so much time working. Even though 100 years ago, famous British economist John Maynard Keynes suggested that in 100 years, probably we will work 20 hours a week, maybe even 15 hours a week. Actually, his predictions about growth in incomes and productivity turned out to be correct.
Yeah.
But we still work 40 hours a week, most of us. And we see that work is now rapidly changing. And indeed, the work itself is being transformed. The work itself is in transition. There are many dimensions through which we see transformation of work in advanced economies and emerging markets in our region in particular.
Okay, and in the report you split it up into sort of three main areas. So one is demographics, one is migration, and one is skills. So let's talk about the demographics. And what are the challenges that the region faces in terms of demography?
Right, the demographics is a very important part of this challenge. Because what we see in a major part of our region, in post-communist countries, in Central Eastern Europe, in post-Soviet countries, except for Central Asia, in Southern Europe, we see that these countries go through rapid aging. If you look around the world, well, advanced economies are aging, and Japan is ahead of everybody else. But then outside of the advanced economies, it is our region, it is the post-communist region, that is aging faster than any other emerging market.
Okay, because it's always been said about China that it's going to be the first country to get old before it gets rich. And is that the challenge that some of your countries are facing as well?
That's exactly true. Some of our countries have already gotten older before they got rich. And when you look at countries like Baltic states, when you look at countries like Bulgaria or Croatia, these are the countries which are not yet rich. While Baltic states are at the level of 60% of European average income per capita, but Bulgaria is actually much below it, 30 or 40%. And when you think about West Balkans, they're even behind. And so when you think about the challenge of aging, when you are not yet rich, it's much harder to address those challenges because you don't have infrastructure, you don't have human capital, you don't have productive capital installed. So it's much harder to address the challenges generated by aging.
So now, if you have demographic challenges, of course, one of the ways of fixing it, logically, is migration. And you have a lot of movements of people in the EBRD region. Can we sort of break down those different migration flows by type?
Indeed, there are several ways to address the challenge of aging. One is indeed automation, when you provide robots which help older people to work in a more productive way or do work without workers. The other one is extending working lives. And this is unfortunately, it's very hard to do in our region where older cohorts are not as healthy as their peers in advanced economies. And the third one is indeed immigration. And the problem, of course, is that immigrants in the Western countries are exactly emigrants from the Eastern countries.
Yeah, so someone's gain is someone else's loss.
Exactly. And that's where Central and Eastern Europe, Southern Europe, post-Soviet countries actually are suffering from the very migration flow from east to west that advanced economies use to help solve their demographic problems.
Okay, so if you take a country like Poland, which has obviously exported huge amounts within the European Union, what has been the impact, the negative impact on Poland of that movement of people?
This is what we actually study in the transition report. We've seen this major natural experiment, unprecedented in the recent economic history, where suddenly Western labor markets were opened for different new member states at a different time. So Poles could find a job in the UK before they could find a job in France and before Romanians and Bulgarians could.
Yeah. And with big gaps in standard of living, that's the thing.
Exactly. And so what we were able to see is how this exodus of Poles and then Romanians and Bulgarians or Hungarians affected firm productivity in the sending countries. And we find major effect on total factor productivity and productivity of firms where brain drain actually took place. And we see that that was a major effect. And so these countries have lost something like 20 percentage points of productivity of their firms because of this huge exodus of skilled young labor.
Okay, now another form of migration you've seen is people being displaced by wars and so forth, haven't you? I mean, particularly in Lebanon and Turkey, which we discussed previously. I mean, what sort of impact does that have? Can it have a positive economic impact at all?
On the countries which bring in immigrants, we show that countries that have good integration policies in place, eventually these immigrants actually contribute to solving the labor shortages problems. And as we said, in some Western countries, there is a labor shortage problem. There is low unemployment in Germany, for example, and if integration policies work out well, that is not just good for immigrants, but also for German firms as well. Now, one other thing which we emphasize in the report is if and when refugees go back, they don't only bring back labor, they also bring back skills, ideas, entrepreneurial capital. And we show that the example of, for example, refugees from former Yugoslavia who left for Germany or other West European countries and then came back after peace accords, that experience actually helped the firms where refugees came back to become more productive and more likely to export to the West.
Okay. Now, the other element you mentioned is the automation. And clearly we're in an unprecedented period of automation, aren't we? Because, with artificial intelligence and robotics has the prospect for great productivity, but also, I mean, it doesn't need as much labor. So what sort of challenges does that create?
Well, the fast pace of technological progress does create a major social challenge, which is job polarization, where if you have skills, this is wonderful time for you because jobs for skilled people are being created and these jobs pay better because you're complementing new technology and the new technology makes you more productive. If you have very low skills, your jobs are not destroyed because your salary is too low to be automated or outsourced. But in the middle of skill distribution, your job is displaced either by robots or by outsourcing. And so we see this increase in inequality and job polarization. What we show in the report is that this process is going as fast in our region as it is in advanced economies such as the United States. And in that sense, this challenge of inequality caused by technological progress is a major challenge for our economies as well. And the response to that is, of course, skills, skills, and skills.
Okay, Sergei, let's leave it there. I'm sure we'll discuss skills and skills at the meeting in Sarajevo. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.